Hello and welcome again to another episode of Sacktown Talks. Today we're pleased to be rejoined by our good friend and guest, Mike Gipson. Mike, how's it going? Welcome to the program again.
Thank you very much, Jared. Always a delight to be on the program and great seeing you again.
Yeah, last time we kind of talked about some of the bills you were working on, and a lot of it was on kind of police reform. Can you kind of catch us up to kind of how those bills ended and kind of how your legislative session ended there with signatures?
Absolutely. And first of all, let me say it's been an exciting year for me. I'm very thrilled with my legislative packet. There were some bills that we had to make 2-year bills, but we advanced a number of bills to the governor's desk, 5 bills in total. And let me simply say, I have received no veto on any of my bills. So he signed and affixed his signature on all 5 of my bills. As we look at our country and how police reform has continuously been a clarion call for change. And so what we want to do is reimagine what law enforcement looks like in the state of California. And so we went to work. We went to work on AB 490, dealing with positional asphyxia. We named this after Angelo Quinto, who was a United States Navyman who served this country, had a mental episode when he came back home. His sister made a very a life-changing phone call, dialing 911, asking or requesting the police to come and help de-escalate the situation. When they got there, they were able to detain Angelo Quinto, but as a result of them detaining him, they also put their knee on his neck, cutting off the oxygen to the brain. Well, Angelo Quinto lived 4 days after that and succumbed to his injuries. And so we went to work on making sure that law enforcement didn't use any kind of positioning, or any kind of instrument or techniques that would cut someone's ability to breathe while they have already been restrained and detained. And so we named this bill Angelo Quinto Law of 2021. Governor Gavin Newsom signed that bill into law. Why that was relevant? Because you look at the officers who apprehended and detained and put their knee on George Floyd's neck, and the nation created this whole atmosphere of people activating and being active, saying we want police reform. We stood up and we introduced an AB 490, and the governor signed that bill into law, which that bill will go into effect January 1, 2022. In addition to that, in my own city in which I represent Watts, Compton, Carson, Wilmington, North Long Beach, Lynwood, Gardena, and also Torrance. But specifically in the city of Compton, there was a deputy sheriff who for 5 years was bullied, harassed, left unprotected as a deputy sheriff because he refused to be part of a law enforcement gang or a sheriff's gang clique that exists. There were the executioners. There were the Vikings and other different names that they named this gang that was a secret society within the sheriff's department. So we went to work after this deputy sheriff taking a bold statement by saying enough is enough and I've had too much. And he came out publicly and we had to address it and we had to do something. So I went to work and created bill AB 958. It's banning police or law enforcement gangs. And so if you are found to be part of a gang in any law enforcement agency in the state of California, it is a terminatable offense now. And you will now, because of another piece of legislation that I voted on, which is Senate Bill 2, it will cause you to be decertified. So this bill, AB 958, was signed into law banning law enforcement from having any kind of gangs, because we know that even like a street gang, a thug street gang, like the Crips and the Bloods, for the cowards they are, we know that in order for you to be part of that, you have to put in work. You have to kill someone. You have to, abuse someone. Well, same principle in law enforcement. You have to use deadly force or unnecessary force. And so in order to be part of this law enforcement gang, and so we say that this is no place in law enforcement in the state of California. This governor, Gavin Newsom, signed this bill into law prohibiting law enforcement gangs existing in the state. And I've had, and I want to underscore, a number of chiefs of police and other law enforcement throughout the state of California call me anonymously, sharing the information, saying we can't get rid of these deputy sheriffs or these police officers because the gang is too strong and powerful. And I'm going in the right direction. And so we did this with the support of those individuals who could not reveal themselves, but certainly support this piece of legislation so that they can now have the ammunition to, once they find someone that's part of a gang, get rid of them and cause them to never be law enforcement in the state of California ever again. Also, in my community, which I represent, Compton, we also created a bill, AB 651, dealing with Woodlawn Cemetery. Prior to this bill being introduced, any cemetery operator in the state of California who operates a cemetery can just walk away, lock the gates and walk away. That's what happened to Woodlawn. The owner couldn't afford it any longer, a $15,000 water bill. The cemetery was in disarray, disrepair. It was deplorable, where loved ones were laid to rest in a place that you wouldn't even want to throw your garbage in. I'm sad to say. And so we went to work on this bill to making sure that it creates transparency and accountability. So now we hold these cemetery operators not only accountable, but also create transparency. And so that the governor signed that bill into law. In addition to that, it also raises the rate paid into endowment care fund so that we can make sure that when we lay a loved one to rest, there's some money there that we can keep the grounds pleasing, aesthetically pleased, so that loved ones can visit their laid to rest loved ones at that cemetery. And then we were able to also tear down a barrier, a financial barrier. I represent the 6th poorest district in the state of California. And so if someone take a test kit at the grocery store or the CVS or pharmacy to get a colorectal test, and that test comes up positive, but you always want to get a second chance or a second opinion. And you go to the doctor, and the doctor asks you, why are you here? And they say, well, I took this test. Well, now the insurance companies would no longer pay for that second test. And for a second test, it costs $1,400. So poor people just don't have $1,400 lying around. And so we wanted to remove the cost element of the $1,400 so that people can get a second test for a colorectal screening to find out whether or not you have colorectal cancer. Because, Jared, if caught early enough, it's a curable cancer. It's one of the cancers that can be cured, right? If caught early enough. And we want to make sure that, one, someone didn't have to deal with a $1,400 barrier to say, you know what, I'm going to take my chances. And we don't want to take chances when it comes down to our healthcare, because you may roll the dice and you may roll up and crap out and actually find out you have cancer and it's too late. And so the governor was we were able to put that bill across the governor's desk, and making sure that people can now get a second opinion that you don't have to pay for, and that you can find out whether or not you have colon cancer. I have a friend right now who is dealing with this very issue, and she's in a bad situation because of colorectal cancer. And so also in the name of Bill Duplessis, who was a lobbyist, who was a former member of the California State Assembly, who was also an NFL football player. He passed away, but he also represented pawnbrokers. And we authored a bill that we continue to do to extend the sunset, which is AB 296. It's a pawnbroker bill that deals with transfer or vested properties in that area. And basically making sure that when people go in and pawn something, that you don't have to continue to pay taxes on what you pawn, especially if you're going to get it out again. And so it just removes a barrier. It creates a sunset. But Jared, I'm also happy to report that this year has been one of the most lucrative years, not only for the state of California, but for Mike Gipson, the Assembly member representing the 64th State Assembly District. I was able to secure $2.28 billion in a direct and indirect way for my district. Yes, money came to my district.
Wow.
Yes, $2.28 billion with a B. We gave $6 million to the city of Carson to renovate Carriage Crest Park that needed badly repairs. And so I'm happy to say that I delivered a check to the city of Carson last Tuesday at their first city council meeting, their in-person city council meeting, for $6 million, so that the boys and girls who go after school program at Carriage Crest Park, who play there soccer and baseball and cheerleading, can now see next year, this time, a brand new state-of-the-art park in the city of Carson. As a matter of fact, tonight, I will be delivering a check to the city of Compton for $10 million. And this is centered around creating green space, connecting the Compton Creek to the Los Angeles River, because we believe that when people will be able to canoe from Los Angeles all the way down to the Compton River, we're going to create green space, park space, a running path, a bike path, and also a horse treacherous path, because we have an area called Richland Farm where they have horses, they have goats and the whole 9 yards, because there's big acreage over there, that they will be able to have a beautification taking place along that entire community. And I'm happy to say that we're doing that work with the Santa Monica Conservancy. In addition to that, last week, I delivered a check for $10 million to Martin Luther King Community Hospital. Why is that important? Because of what people are going through. People sometimes are suffering in silence because of the trauma not only caused by COVID-19, the aftermath of COVID-19, but people are just dealing with emotional stress and they need help. And this hospital stands in need of to be able to create behavioral health counselors, and to be able to create a workforce development for the doctors and nurses and the healthcare professionals at Martin Luther King Community Hospital. So they were absolutely thrilled to receive a $10 million from the state of California by way of their Assemblymember Mike Gipson. And directly across the street, we delivered a check to Charles Drew University of Medicine and Science. Charles Drew University of Medicine and Science, it is our goal that we will make this the Xavier of the West Coast. We delivered a check for $50 million for the infrastructures to create and develop new buildings so that we can house more students who want to go to nursing, more students who wants to go into become doctors, that they will be able to get the teaching and the training right there to become full-fledged certified nurses and certified doctors, and do their residency directly across the street at Martin Luther King Community Hospital. So we were met by the delivering of the check with so many people there that were thrilled. It was very jubilant. It was very well received of the $50 million that Charles Drew University of Medicine and Science received. We did $15 million for the Student Success Coach Grant Program to support AmeriCorps partners like City Year LA to address social, emotional, and also academic needs of low-income students. These teachers go in, they work with our students, they work with our young people in the community who come from low incomes and making sure they're on grade level, but they spend the one-on-one time making sure that these young people have all the tools they need before they matriculate over to middle school and also high school. And they have invested themselves into the community. And there's so much more I can say, even around creating this health equity, where we're now empowering, giving money. The governor, this is $300 million, Jared. The governor took the language out of my bill and funding, this health equity fund that clinics, those who are boots on the ground, neighborhood clinics are now empowered to resources so that they can get the PPE and the whole 9 yards, because we know that people who live in the community will go to a clinic first, and now they can go to the clinic and get the care on their level to be able to turn the corner and get their health back on track. And so we just simply say that we've been doing what we've been called to do, and that is to answer the calls from the residents of the 64th Assembly District. We send out a survey every year asking them what they would like for my agenda to be. And I take that up and I run with it. And I've been hearing the voices of the people through a survey so their voices can be part of my trajectory, the agenda, the policymaking process. And we keep them updated as we go on throughout the entire year. And then we tell the people what we've been able to accomplish by them weighing in on the agenda. And we say that we've been very successful in that. We want to bring people to be part of the solution and not part of the problem in our community.
That's extraordinary, Mike. $2 billion back to your community. That's amazing. The governor had an announcement the other day that we're $31 billion in surplus so far, probably going to grow by the time the budget hits in January. Kind of how do you think we should spend this money, Mike? How much should the 64th get this year?
Well, let me say, we're going to get as much as we possibly can. One of the things that we have to wait and find out, wherever I land in my district through redistricting, which is absolutely critical, we're going to bring home the bacon, because we believe that that's the tangible. Where people can touch and feel the policies in which they want to have a hand in. And so Martha King, we need to do this to making sure that they stand as an institution for healthcare in a community that has a lot of indigent care, a community that has high diabetes and heart disease and blood pressure and the whole 9 yards. We want to make sure that people live a long, prosperous life. And so we're going to go and see where there's needs are. We want to build a training center. It's going to be a $150 million training center located in Wilmington, where I represent right now. And it's going to be a training center partnered with IOW and the Port of Los Angeles and other ports, making sure that young people can go in there and get trained and also go into a job that's going to be able to secure a financial future for them, so they can become homeowners and get a piece of the American dream. So that's top on the list of my priorities, to try to leverage some of those resources so that we can envision creating a state-of-the-art training center in Wilmington, so that not only the world can see, but also the people that surrounds in part of that region can also partake for this generation and the next.
Right. Last time we talked, you talked about a select committee you were forming on police reform and another one on infectious diseases. Kind of how have those select committees been going, and kind of what are you guys working on right now?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because as we're on this recess break, I have a select committee on infectious diseases coming up, and that's going to be taking place at Cal State University, Dominguez Hills. In addition to that, we will have a select committee on infectious diseases, and that will take place at Charles Drew University of Medicine and Science. And so it's important that we, talk about the infectious diseases that still exist, that's still part of our atmosphere, making sure that people receive the information, and also, rally around. We will have authoritative doctors and healthcare professionals who will be part of the panel discussion. And hopefully we'll come out of that discussion with a real plan on part of my agenda for 2022. We hope to be able to have other select committees throughout the entire year. I'm on a number of different committees, but these are the ones that I chair, and I'm very, very grateful that Speaker Anthony Rendon has given me the opportunity to chair these high-profile committees, so that, we can have a very robust conversation and trying to reach some real solutions. Crime is also very relevant and prevalent in my district, and so one of the things I will be having is a conference, a one-day conference, and it may not be enough time to cram a real conversation on how do we decrease crime, whether it's gun violence or gang violence in my community. We're attempting to try something we never tried before and implement something we never implemented before moving forward. But the ultimate goal is that we want to see a real decrease when it comes down to gun violence in my community. We want to see through the data where there's a real decrease when it comes down to gang violence in my community. And so we want to bring the experts, the boots on the grounds, the gang interventionists, and law enforcement, our clergy, loved ones who've lost loved ones due to gun violence and gang violence. And we would have a roundtable discussion with all of these invested individuals, because there's something that we're not doing because these things are still steadily increasing. It is off the chart. We don't understand why. This pandemic, you would think that we live in a pandemic that we would have a record decrease when it comes down to gun violence and gang violence, but it's increased. Right now, the Los Angeles Police Department is asking for more additional money so they can hire more additional officers on the street. So I push back on a narrative that we should defund the police, because we cannot defund the police, because what that means is communities of color, in which I represent, will be left vulnerable. It will mean that people will die at a high rate if we don't have law enforcement in our community. We still want to create transparency and accountability, but we want to make sure that our communities are in fact secure and safe. Because again, last point, we cannot afford to have our private security to come and police my community, like Beverly Hills can. When something goes off, something goes wrong, when a man's Rolex watch, get this, when a man's Rolex watch is taken in broad daylight, and robbed in broad daylight in Beverly Hills, what do? They increase Beverly Hills police on the streets, and then they hire security companies to patrol blocks and blocks in Beverly Hills. But when someone's Timex watch gets stolen in Watts or Compton, nothing. You hear crickets. We don't have the resources to bring our own private security company to patrol every street. So it will create an unfair a disadvantage in our community if we defund the police.
Yeah, well put. Especially, that's something Governor Newsom touched on yesterday, something that needs to be looked at, kind of the rise in crime and violent crime. So thank you for looking into that. It should be interesting results.
Absolutely. Thank you.
One thing you touched on earlier was this survey you did. You've always done a great job kind of reaching out to your community, getting a sense of what your community wants. Kind of what's the feedback you've gotten from your recent survey results, and kind of what are your priorities next year coming out?
Yeah, we just sent out the survey. And so we'll continue to send it out until the end of December to our residents. And then we've gotten 6,000-7,000 back over, over a period of time. We send out every year, and every year we've gotten about a 20% or so return, people weighing in, and we analyze it and we characterize it and we prioritize. And public safety, Jared, let me simply say, public safety has been at the top of the list, really? Right? And so we have to we can't turn away from that. People feel that it's unsafe. And so we have to create an opportunity and create policies that speaks to this very topic. And then also jobs was another one. And I'm just trying to think off the top of my head from last year. And then there's healthcare. Is another topic in which people are most concerned with. And it's also education, making sure that we have, some of the best educational institutions, not just university, not just community colleges, but also high school and middle school and elementary school, right? We just passed where 4-year-olds can go to kindergarten free of charge in public schools. We just passed money in order for that to take place. Why? Because we want to start children off early. But we also want to make the environment safe for them as well, and making sure they have a great educational experience. And so when you rank them all, about the 10th or the 9th area is the environment. And I think I've been absolutely consistent. Some people would have me, Jared, make it a choice. And the choice that some people will have me make is, do I save the tree or the person under the tree? And I have to also say that homelessness is probably number 3rd on the list, if not the second on the list of priorities. And so I have to save the person under the tree. And so I say that with all humility and respect, because it's about making sure that we reduce the number of people who are homeless in my district. California leads the way as it relates to homelessness, and we have to address that very issue. The environment is absolutely critical, and absolutely, I've carried a number of bills dealing with taking diesel trucks off of the streets and creating a fund so that you can, the person who owns a diesel truck will get a near zero truck so that they can continue to operate and do their work. I've also carried a bill dealing with taking 20-year cars. Some people are driving around with 20-year cars, which doesn't meet, our climate goals and objectives. And so giving them money to trade that car in, and so they can get a more up-to-date vehicle. And so we've been doing that work and listening to the voices of the people and weighing in when it comes down to our environment. And we'll continue to do that because we want to make sure that, one, we have an environment that is certainly safe and conducive to people's living here in our community. So it's going to take all of us doing that, but it's going to take a balanced approach.
Yeah. This week is Thanksgiving week, and it's, the holiday season, and you've always been great about giving back to your community. What kind of volunteer stuff are you working on this week with your staff and the district?
Wow. Let me tell you something. I've been to 4 turkey giveaways today alone. Right. And so IOW, we are feeding, when I say it concludes at 4:00, we are feeding 1,500 needy families in and around the port of Los Angeles in Wilmington, which I represent. We had an array of elected officials. We've had volunteers from the men and women of ILWU and their families and wives, husbands, and children coming, bagging up groceries and blessing so many families. I was over in Watts prior to, whereas Dr. Sweet Alice Harris, she is the founder and the creator of Parents of Watts. She's a household name in Los Angeles. Gave out 500 turkeys. People walked up or rolled their baskets or drove through the streets, a one-way street, and we placed a turkey in their car so they also can make sure that they have a turkey on the table as well. But it goes beyond that. We have to realize that in the time we're living in, and as we turn the corner from this pandemic, everybody's not turning, and everybody's not turning a corner. People are still struggling to make ends meet. People are not going to have a Thanksgiving dinner or turkey on the table. So it is our responsibility, if in fact we're really true to the adage, am I my brother or sister's keeper? And we have to answer the call truthfully. And I'm saying, yes, we are. So my team has gone out. We have done food giveaways. We have done turkey giveaways just to make sure that people have food on the table and they can celebrate like most of Americans will celebrate Thanksgiving and then give thanks as a result of it. So we give back, and we give back in a real large way in my community. And I'm very, very grateful of the overwhelming kind of support volunteers that have shown up, whether or not their DNA matches the person who's in need, whether or not they've ever laid eyes on them the first time or heard their name being spoken. They've stood in the gap and they said, I am my brother and sister's keeper. And they've been helping, being a blessing to them who's less fortunate.
That's awesome. You just kind of touched upon it that, your district is part in the port of LA and the port of Long Beach there. We see it in the news, we see the backups, how is that looking right now? And, are we going to be able to have Christmas presents, Mike? Is that port going to get cleared out?
Let me tell you, the men and women who represent the longshoremen, the dock workers, et cetera, they're working extremely hard. They're working around the clock, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day to making sure that we offload all those ships onto our docks and move that product to the stores. And my hat's off to them, and also, to the president. But yes, we have a problem. We have a problem because as fast as we unload, we still have ships in the harbor waiting to get in. Yesterday, I think it was 60-something ships out in the harbor, in the ocean, waiting to come in so they can be unloaded. I was there 2 weeks ago, and we had 200,000 containers on the dock And so they had to put and implement some fines because some of those containers are empty and people are not picking them up, so they can leave room for the ones that needs to be unloaded and offloaded. And so they had to put some things in place in order to motivate people to make sure that these empty containers are moved away somewhere, and somewhere safe. Because we've had in my district where a semi truck rolling on the residential streets, which they shouldn't be, the container flipped off and crashed on top of a car. Thank God that no one was in it. But that's just another illustration that there's jubilant times in terms of work and people being able to be put to work, and casuals are working, and there is a lot of that vitality and excitement and energy on our ports. But we still also have a truck driver shortage. We also have to make sure these containers who are empty are being taken away to make room for other containers. So it's a good problem because people are being put to work. The bad problem is that we have to deal with the logjam moving forward. And I believe they're working extremely hard to create solutions to this dilemma.
Interesting. And thanks. Hats off to the men and women in the 64th working to kind of clear that logjam.
Indeed.
Definitely. Some people don't know this, Mike, but Mike, you're a pescatarian. So what do you and your family eat on Thanksgiving?
So we eat, my family eat everything from turkey to roast to ham and the whole 9 yards. I'll be cooking and preparing food and I'll be frying turkeys for the family, stuff that I can't participate in because I've been a pescatarian for over almost 22 years come April. And so I'll have fish. I'm making shrimp dressing. So we don't have anyone in the family that are in fact allergic to any shellfish. So we'll be making shrimp dressing so I can participate. And we just substitute the chicken and the chicken broth for shrimp broth and also shrimp. But we're going to have we're going to be so grateful because this is a time that since this pandemic that we're going to be able to have family over. Everyone is fully vaccinated and people will have their booster. And so it's going to be good. We're going to do and go around and have everyone talk about why they're thankful and give thanks. And so that's just a long time. That's just a process in itself. Even from the youngest to the oldest will give thanks, and they will have prayer and give thanks, and then we'll tear right into the food and just go into a sleep coma. But it'll be a good time to just fellowship with family and friends.
Well, that's great. Well, that's awesome, Mike. Thanks so much for joining us. You're like the Ed McMahon of the 64th, bringing all those big checks around. Awesome stories to hear about, and look forward to hearing how that continues next year when you catch up with you.
Jared, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to Sacktown. I really appreciate the opportunity to share, with your listening audience, the work that I've done. And I'm very grateful to the people of the 64th District for giving me what my true why is. This is why I wake up every morning. This is what fuels my engine, is to make a difference. I need to make sure before I leave office that I made a difference, that I matter. And I'm grateful each day that the residents of the 64th has given me this opportunity. So thank you very much, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.